Good morning, everyone. We are here at the Senate chamber of the Honorable Jesus P. Mofnes Memorial Building. It is August 1st, 9:16 a.m. And today we'll be conducting the budget hearing for the Department of Fire and Emergency Medical Services. Before we proceed with the adoption of today's agenda, I'd like to recognize the committee members who are present here this morning. We have to my left, Senator Dennis Mendiola, to my far right, Senator Jude Hoff-Schneider, to his left, Senator Selena Babalta, to her left, the Vice Chair, Senator Karina Magofnia. I chair this committee, Dalo Manglonia, and with 5 members present, we have the quorum to proceed with today's committee meeting. For the record, Senators Paul and Carl are excused from today's meeting. And assisting the committee, we have our Legislative Bureau staff, our Senior Legislative Assistant, Jolyn Dueñas-Tagabo, and also Devin Macaranas, our Sergeant at Arms, Ben Terlahi, Legal Counsel, Joel Bermudez, Fiscal Analyst, Dave Demapon, IT Manager, Jonathan Diaz. And with that, we will proceed with the agenda this morning. And can I get a motion for the adoption of today's agenda?
So move. Second.
All right, motion was made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We now open the floor for public comment. Looks like we have none. And so with that, we now close a portion of public comments and we move on to introductions. Today, the Department of Fire and Emergency Medical Services submitted a budget request of $6.2 million with the request for 133 FTEs. However, the governor's budget proposal only allocated $4 million, but kept the FTEs. And in review of their budget proposal, we have identified 18 vacancies, which these positions have been these positions were kept, but no funding was allocated to fill these vacancies. There are 7 divisions under DFEMS. We have Administration, Emergency Services, Fire Prevention and Arson, Investigation, Emergency Medical Services, Logistical Support, Training, and Dispatch. The proposal indicates a 12.5% reduction in hours compared to the budget allocated this fiscal year, where they are included as part of law enforcement officers, meaning they are 100% funded at regular hours of 106. But with next fiscal year's proposal, with a 12.5% reduction, that brings their hours down to 92 3/4 of an hour, 92.75 hours, which is actually 13.25 hour cut as opposed to the 10 hours across the board for employees on an 80-hour work schedule. Based on a record as of June 2nd, the department has about 310,000 in revolving account balances. And so maybe we can get some clarification on that as of today, what the balance is. And before we proceed with their questions at this time, I would like to recognize the commissioner and his team to provide any remarks at this morning. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Honorable Vice President, Senator Manglonia, and Honorable Senate members. My name is Juan Pua, Commissioner of Fire and EMS. Thank you for giving us this opportunity for the budget hearing. We are in support of the FY 2025 Governor's Budget Proposal. Please allow us to present a short presentation from our department. So, our mission is to preserve life, property, and the environment through decisive action, strong leadership, teamwork, and faithful community partners. We are created by Public Law 18-73 in 2015. We have a total of 164 personnel across Sinamay, 114 in Saipan, 28 in Rhoda, 22 in Tinian. We are NIMS compliance and we are Pro Board certified, and we are gearing towards the National Registry certification. The Department of Fire is a line agency of the executive branch of the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas Island. It is headed by the Commissioner, who is the executive officer, and 3 deputy commissioners, Rhoda, Tinian, and Saipan. The department is comprised of 5 divisions: Division of Emergency Services, Division of Fire Prevention and Arson Investigation, Division of Emergency Medical Services, Division of Logistical Support, and Division of Administration. Each division is headed by Assistant Chief, who oversees all activities related to functions established or assigned under their respective command and control structure. The department do the following. We engage in fire prevention control, extinguishment of fire, and response to emergency where life, property, or environment is at risk. We provide emergency and non-emergency services, conduct special operations that include search and rescue, land, air, and sea, hazardous material response, wildland, and marine firefighter. We conduct fire code enforcement and arson investigations, conduct National Fire Protection Association training standards and certification through the National Board of Fire Service Professional Qualification. We conduct National EMS Education training standards and certification through the National Registries of EMTs. Reduce the risk of fire injuries or death and the need for EMS through effective public education and injury prevention program. We are the link between the community. They rate us based on services they receive. We wanted to give the citizens of the CNMI the best services that we could with the limited resources we have. It is important to remember that we are called to intervene in an emergency, whether real or perceived. There's no difference. The Department of Fire is organized as follows, like I mentioned earlier, and it shows on the screen there. So emergency services, they provide ambulance fire suppression, vehicle extrication, search and rescue, hazmat, wildland firefighting, public and private outreach program. Fire prevention and arson investigation division, they provide fire safety code, fireworks control act, designated fire lane enforcement, fire arson investigation, public and private outreach program. Emergency medical services division, they provide EMT and basic life support certification, quality improvement, quality assurance, and they handle several of our federal grants. Logistical support, they provide fleet, fire station maintenance, apparatus and equipment purchasing, and inventory. The administration division, they provide payroll, they handle payroll, human resources, ambulance billing and collection, and administrative support. Our goal is to enhance our department's response capabilities to emergencies, whether they occur 24/7, thus assuring our firefighters, residents, and visitors have adequate protection from fire and fire-related hazards and have adequate access to emergency medical services. Now, I would like to mention about the fire stations and their location. So in Susupi Fire Station, there's 1 medic, 1 rescue rapid response vehicle. In Garapan Fire Station, there's 1 fire engine, 1 medic, 1 forestry truck, 1 rescue boat. In Capital Fire Station 3, we designated as our training facility as well as a command center in case there's a natural disasters. Cobreville Fire Station 4, there's 1 medic and 1 fire engine. In Kangman Fire Station 5, there's 1 medic and 1 forestry truck. Fire Station 6 is north is pending for now. Recently, we have a conversation with the chief of logistics that Global Hotel is willing to proceed to erect a temporary fire station due to the funding issues, and when there's and they said that they will continue with the permanent building, but for now they can go ahead and start with the temporary fire station to serve the people from the north. Our challenges is lack of funding and resources and manpower. Our strategies is annual outreach program and EMS fire and injury prevention campaign. Purchase 2 fire engines with a water capacity of 1,000 gallon. Purchase 1 tanker truck with a water capacity of 3,000 gallon. Seek federal grants that will assist and augment fundings for training, manpower, salary, duty uniforms, personal protective equipment, emergency apparatuses, tools, equipment, appliances, nozzles, self-contained breathing apparatus, and other essential needs for the CNMI. If I may, I would like to talk about our spending plan for our revolving account. So on our ambulance account, our spending plan is to purchase 2 new rescue units for the North and South coverage, a total amount of 300,000 each. To continue to bring instructors from Guam every 2 years to recertify our super instructors for a week for a total of $3,000, and that's for this entire CNMI. To purchase 14 automated external defibrillator for a total of 27,000. To maintain cognitive and psychomotor skills training at a total of 12,000. To pay for annual recurring contract services with Zoe data system to collect data for billing at 60,000.
Sorry, excuse me. Are these included in your presentation, or you just it's
Yes, sir.
separate?
It's included, but it's
Are we-
not showing up there.
I think
Oh.
your clicker. Are you able to?
Yes. After my presentation there, then I will talk about our statistics.
Okay.
Unless you want to, and I can.
No, the one that you were just mentioning right now, is it included in your presentation right here? Your spending plan?
Yeah.
Can we
Yes,
go
sir.
to the slide part?
Ngan, I can put this in the slide.
Can we put it up?
Yeah.
Put it up
Okay.
in the slide.
I know I need to go to my hard drive, the Biba Bastina presentation.
No, if it's on a separate file, that's
Ah.
okay. I was wondering if it's on this presentation right now.
But I can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. To pay for annual recurring contract services with priority billing services, to collect services rendered to Medicare and Medicaid insured patients, ranging to total amount of ambulance transport per month at $35 per Medicaid and Medicaid patients claim. To pay monthly professional services of Defense Medical Director, depending on the number of hours of services provided to the department, not more than 67 hours or 10,000 per month. To pay for outreach programs and promotional items for EMS and emergency medical services for children campaign annually for a total of 10,000. Our operational and maintenance cost is 654,000 annually. Our general and supply cost is 200,000. For our fire safety code revolving account is to purchase 1 fire engine to strategically place in Susupi, a total amount of 700,000 alone. This is not to include the tools, appliances, nozzles, and equipment. To purchase a rapid response unit for code enforcement and fire investigation at a total of 200,000. To augment fire personnel salary, to augment salary for the civilian employees in the department, to purchase firearms, ammunition to maintain annual certification requirement and tactical skills proficiencies at a total of 20,000. To pay for fuel at a total amount of 17,000 a month. To pay for water and sewer at a total of 7,000 a month. Our utility amount is 15,000 a month. Our communication and internet costs a total of 5,000. to pay for outreach programs and promotional items for the Fire Prevention Week annually campaign for a total of 15,000. To maintain annual membership dues, to maintain the continuity of information sharing of an on-island enhancement training at a total of 55,000. So for last year's our incident, we have a total of 712 response, and that's for the fire incidents. For emergency medical response, we had a total of 5,516. So we're averaging about 10 calls a day. And these are the emergency response that we respond to. Our, excuse me, our enforcement, we have a total of 892 number of inspection, 258 for new, and 631. For search and rescue mission, we have 5. Wildland fire for the CNMI, those are the total amount of fires that occur, the number of acres, and the gallons that we use. For Seaburn, we have 11. This is the chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive incidents he has met. Our community outreach is we do public and private schools presentation, career week, station visitation, static displays, EMS, EMSC, firefighter of the year week, and we do it every year, as well as the fire prevention week annually. We provide community CPR awareness. We do fire alarm installation with collaboration with the American Red Cross. They donated the smoke alarm, and we install it to the community at their residence. We provide fire tsunami drills to the public school system, fire extinguisher awareness training. We also have instructors to teach for the community emergency response team. And we also had an MOU with NMC where we teach the disaster preparedness and response, disaster response first aid training. We're also involved with the Manamco takeover, and we are involved with the 9/11 annual campaign. So these are all of training. So every 2 years, we have to recertify our EMT certifications and CPR. We had the OPM, Marana Shelf Services, and PSS Professional Development Training. We have the OPM and EOC training requirement. We just completed the EMS patient care protocols and the standing orders for the administration of Narcan. This type of medication, we give it to the patient for all overdose patient. Narcan, albuterol for asthma, glucose for diabetic patient, and we all distribute it to the medic. Just recently, the hazardous material readiness for operations, when ARF requested, because they had their academy, so we went and teach their personnel for the hazmat from awareness and operation. Fire prevention and arson investigation personnel, firearms recertification for their skills proficiencies, forestry practice qualification and training annually. By next week, Once they completed all the itineraries for our personnel and the civilians, they will be deployed to Southern California to assist for the fire service because there's a big fire that is happening there. NHTSA, we just had like 3 recertification and certification for the child passenger technician. And we also had an MOU with NMC to help them out to teach the training for the disaster preparedness and the disaster advanced first aid training. So these are some of our federal funds that we have. The Wildland Cooperative Program, the State Fire Capacity Program, and the State Fire. Especially sa kalansogon na tigoguvli. And NHTSA, we're still waiting for the grant, and then the EMS. That's the amount that we're receiving. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
How much do you anticipate from the NHTSA? 30,000. I'll let them proceed before we begin our.
So these are all our accomplishments. Just recently, we officially transferred 1 jet ski from each island to Tinian and Rhoda, and 1 ATV with a capacity of 30 gallons. And these are all coming from a CDBGR grant. So we had 2 here, 1 Rhoda, 1 Tinian. And we had the Chevrolet truck where they retrofit a 300-gallon water capacity to serve Cagman and Cobler. We are on the phase 2 of the roof hardening for Cagman and Susup Fire Station. That costs about $5 million. The passage of House Bill 23-82 from the Fire Code to the International Fire Code. The electronic patient care report, which we have the tough book and we distribute it to all 3 islands. So we continue to meet with the monthly payment for our utility bills. And we just completed our EMSC 3rd quarter advisory meeting, which is a combination of all 3 islands. Oh, yeah, and recently we just purchased 2 new ambulances, and they're on the way to replace the old and unreliable units. And that's from our revolving account. So our priority is to get 1 fire engine that costs about $700,000, to get 2 new rescue rapid response vehicle, and to go ahead and have the Global Hotel to proceed with the fire station located by the Popo Beach. And we will reintroduce the CNMI Next Generation 911 telecommunication system. Now for the FEMA, we're going to apply for that assistance fire grant, where it has helped firefighters on frontline for their emergency equipment, PPEs, personal protective equipment, and other critical emergency equipment, as well as the U.S. Department of Interior, where we're going to tap into the TAP grant to assist us to get additional personal protective equipment for our personnel and apparatus. The island of Saipan currently fits the criteria between high and medium hazard occupancies. The development of high-rise hotels and office buildings pushes us more to highlight high hazard occupancies. So these are the NFPA recommendation. So for high hazard occupancies, that includes school, hospital, nursing homes, refineries, high-rise building, and other high-risk or large fire potential occupancies, at least 4 pumpers, 2 ladders, or combination apparatus with equivalent capacities. Now, for the medium hazard occupancies, at least 3 pumpers, 1 ladder truck, or combination apparatus with equivalent capabilities. For low hazard occupancies, at least 2 pumpers, 1 ladder truck, or combination apparatus with equivalent capacities. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your presentation this morning. We'll go ahead and proceed with the questions, but I'll go ahead and start off with your submission, your budget request. I noticed that in the governor's submission, the only division that you've requested operational funds was under the emergency medical services, but I don't see any requests for the other divisions. So, was that intentional, or do you think this was left out? Sorry, I may be wrong. It was under logistical support, but all the other divisions did not include any operational funding requests. Is that correct? And what you've submitted to OMB?
Yes, that is correct.
Is there a reason why no requests were made for the other divisions?
Good morning. I'm Chief Mesa of Administration. There are several departments or divisions that were actually given other expenses like utility and stuff like that. If you look to the pamphlet that was given, our budget submission for administration, we included utility at 486,000.
Actually, for clarification, the 486 was for personnel. But if you
I'm
look
sorry.
at total
Yes,
all
you're
others,
correct. I'm sorry about that. Yes,
right.
that is correct. One of the reasons why logistics was giving the majority of operational costs is because they're the primary source of maintaining the not only the fuels, but they're also required to maintain the apparatus response capability, the facilities to make sure they're functioning appropriately for the safety of our personnel, and to make sure that the only thing that we did not include was administration for utilities because we are the one in charge of that. But even with that, our revolving funds actually controls or maintains the operational costs because of the current financial status.
Correct. But even despite the understanding that there may not be operational funds allocated, a lot of times even just a simple request gives us paints a picture of the true needs of the agency. And so I don't know, was that intentionally left out with the understanding that these will be covered by other sources of revenue?
Well, the logistics actually was given more than what they actually needed is due to they are the ones in charge of purchasing and distribution.
Right. Part of your presentation also included the need for recertification or additional training, and so I would assume that the training division would have a request for operational funds unless these are going to be covered by other sources. Is that correct?
It will be covered by our revolving account.
Okay. Earlier, I mentioned that there, as of June, was a balance of approximately 310,000. Do you think is that accurate as of June, and if so, what is your current balance for your revolving accounts?
In regards to 1953, the ambulance revolving funds. In regards to 1953 ambulance revolving funds, it every month, or we constantly checked it every month, because we tend to see that the funds is never accurate. Just this morning, or 2 days ago, we saw the funds at 100 and some thousand. Just this morning, now I just got information that it's down to 4,000. Correction, from 118,000 down to 4,000. So we're constantly communicating with Secretary of Finance, trying to figure out if this money was actually used elsewhere. For example, they took 89,000 to pay for utility, and that was to pay off some of our existing balances. So we have to maintain communication constantly to make sure that the amount that is actually showing on our Munis system is accurate, because there's a tendency of it being there today, tomorrow's not there.
So, are you saying that without DFIM's actions on how these funds are being expended, Department of Finance is taking away from these accounts without your knowledge to pay for department expenses?
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, it's just there's. I'm not here to speculate into such time. I do have the facts in front of me, but right now that's what we're seeing. So it's just a constant communication from, no, we didn't transfer funds yet. We're still trying to certify funds, to yes, we took out funds to pay for utility bills, stuff like that. So as far as them taking it without our permission, I don't have that in front of me to make that statement.
But even as what you are seeing on your end, and maybe the ability to I guess look at your account statement, have you noticed maybe activities that wasn't entered or submitted by your department, as opposed to what finance is, I guess, the actions that finance has been taking in?
So this is what I've found, that if I open my computer to enter Munis revolving funds current balance, I get a specific number. If I open another computer on a different name, they get a different amount on their computer. So that's my constant question with O&B and Secretary of Finance office. Why is it that our revolving funds statement is not sequenced? Every division or every department has a different number. So that's why we're constantly communicating with SOF office to make sure that what we see today is the same amount that we see tomorrow, and they have the same figures as well. Because it may show on my computer I have 10,000, but in their system they only show that I only have 4,000.
Right. But this poses a concern, being that you submitted a limited request for operational funds under the understanding that your revolving accounts would be used to cover for some of these expenses. But if you're saying that your statement balance is not indicating the true amount of what you believe should be in there, then that may pose a concern or an issue to
Yes.
covering future expenses.
That's correct.
How, seeing that there wasn't any operational funds allocated for the current fiscal year, how much has your department expended year to date?
For the ambulance year-to-date expenditure, we're looking at almost close to almost expenditure almost 2 million. I'm sorry. expense total.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's about 2,913,000.
From the start of the fiscal year?
Pretty much.
Do you know what your balance was at the start of the fiscal year?
If when every fiscal year we tend to see that we accumulated close to $1 million. But
In
the start of the
ambulance
fiscal year,
fees?
I'm like I was saying, Munis is pretty much kind of puts us in a confusion right now on the actual amount, because when we actually do our calculation, when our collectors in my division does their collection, it shows that every year we collect to almost close to $1 million. And how we spend it depends on the assistance we do get from other federal grants that we do have in regards to expenditure for supplies and equipment. So I can't give you that accurate number as far as the beginning year. How much do we have?
So if you're saying that you collect on average $1 million a year, but since the start of the fiscal year you've expended $2 million.
Actually, the exact number is 1,426,000.
What is that amount? 1 million, 1.4 is
1.4 is what we actually spend on a year-to-date expense.
okay. Do you have a breakdown of the categories of what these were, what activities these were?
Yes, I do. For example, majority of that expense went to repairs and maintenance, and we spent about 384,000 year-to-date expense. As far as professional services, we spent 197,000, and it keeps going down. So pretty much it's all about supplies and operational needs.
So that's about close to 600,000 in just maintenance and professional services. So how did you spend the other 800,000?
If I go down the line, it's some of that funds was used for personnel.
How much
Pe-
for personnel?
We use 15,739.
Would this be for overtime or?
I'm not too sure. It just says personnel, but most likely it does. It might be for overtime.
Okay.
Cleaning services, licensing, utility, communications, printing services, advertisement, rentals, travel.
How much in travel?
We spend 112,000.
Okay. What's your next biggest expense?
Right here is supplies,
And how much is that?
357,000.
So your presentation mentions a lot of these supplies maybe were covered by federal funds also. So what were the bulk of these supplies that were purchased using your revolving accounts?
It's mostly the supplies is pretty much for station needs, office operation, and office supplies. Pretty much, I don't have the actual breakdown, but we go on Munis, we can actually see the itemized that we actually purchase these stuff.
Okay.
I don't have that with me right now.
Okay. Are you guys on a prepaid or postpaid meter for CUC?
We are prepaid.
And have you purchased for the advanced months?
Yes, we do. We do that. We try to purchase the amount for at least every 3 months to make sure that the operation does not shut down.
Okay. Can we go back to your slide on the federal grants? are you familiar with how much in federal grants are being used for any personnel expenses? But are you allowed to use some of these grants for personnel expenses? No.
So like especially for those the wildland fire grants, most of the grants we use is for PPs for our personnel, the personal protective equipment.
Okay. Sorry, before I proceed, my next question is for OMB. Was the intention of applying this cut across the board, was it intended to provide the same percentage across the board, or the number of hours, considering that DFEMS has a different regular hour per pay period?
Good morning, everybody. The budget is across the board 87.5, except for the constitutionally mandated requirements. Those were set aside. But for the Department of Fire and the law enforcement, including other law enforcement agencies like DPS and corrections, there is a law enforcement grant that we received from the Office of Insular Affairs for current year. And we anticipate the same grant for FY 2025, which would provide allocation towards the cut, the 12.5% cut for the personnel, so they would be covered.
Okay, but is that indicated in the other volume, the 12.5% that may be covered next fiscal year?
I believe in the other volume, it's not indicated because the grant, our CIP spending plan allocation has not been submitted. It's not due yet until September 13. But we anticipate to include another 3 million for the law enforcement agencies for their personnel costs for the cut. In the current year, it's in the other volume under the federal program. You can probably find it under the Office of Planning and Development, which CIP falls under. So it's there.
Okay. Do you have are you privy to the accounts that are, I guess, the revolving account balances that you might be able to verify some of these figures?
Like for which figures are you
For like the
referring
ambulance
to?
fee?
Ambulance, yes, we do. I mean, we do have that.
Is it, I don't know if you have your computer or any of your stuff. Are you able to pull that up,
I
or
can
do you have it with you?
pull it up. If you could just give me some time.
Sure. While you're trying to get that up, going back to DFEMS, since the submission, have you had any of your personnel resign?
OMB?
No,
Yes,
sorry,
yes.
going back to under what divisions are we looking at? Firefighters and EMTs, or
That's
administrative
under
positions?
the emergency services.
How many people have you had resigned since the budget submission that may not be indicated on your
3.
three? Are there any plans to fill these positions, and if so, are there plans to have another academy in the next fiscal year?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we were see like right now. Our emergency medical dispatchers are running on a skeleton crew, so we're gonna announce for at least another 3 personnel for the dispatchers.
Okay. And another, going back to the ambulance revolving fee accounts. What has your experience been with getting the funds reimbursed or deposited into your accounts? Because from what we heard on Rhoda, a lot of times it takes a while just to see some of that funds for them. And so what has your experience been with trying to get some of those monies into your accounts?
Once they allocated the funding, so I need to sign off the account for them to transfer. So I believe that once I sign that document that we're going to transfer from here to either Road or TNN, that's when it occurs.
Okay, but what about when you bill and then from the time you submit the billing to the time you get reimbursed for those services?
Yeah, Chair. Sorry. Maybe Chief no EMS can clarify that one. How's that process go? No.
Good morning, I'm Chief Bloss. So we just procure a new biller out of Virginia. So he's gonna do a custom report with to separate Rhoda, Tinian, and Saipan. So every month, once Chief Mesa will receive that email on the breakdown, then his office will write a letter, commissioner will sign it, requesting Secretary of Finance if they can take that amount and deposit into their respective account.
Right. But from the time of the billing to the time of
It normally takes about maybe 2 months.
2 months.
The biggest challenge we do have is the Medicaid. That's taking several months, almost a year, because of funding.
do you know how much is owed to your department?
To give you an accurate number, I don't, but it's somewhere close to pending payments, roughly to about 300,000.
No. And that's in a span of how many years?
That one, because we've already received previous payments. The one I'm talking about is just for several months.
Okay.
From January to present.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, I'll recognize the next speaker, but Ms. Vicky, please, at any time, just raise your hand when you have that report ready. Floor is open to any of the members. We recognize the Vice Chair, then Senator Malta.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Commissioner, and to your team. Where do I begin? I'm very concerned based on the information that I heard this morning. I mean, how can we sit here and talk about a budget if the funding source, the balances of the funding sources are unreliable? How can you plan your budget for the fiscal year if you have a list of all these things that you need to operate your department, and then funds are missing or unaccounted for? Or help us understand what the process is, so that your departments have an idea of what funds should be in these revolving fund accounts. But yet when you check the system, and it's even more concerning that one user ID sees a different number versus another ID. Has that concern been raised to finance and OIT?
Thank you, Vice, and maybe I can chime in there on this device. I'm the deputy commissioner, and we've been experiencing that. And you're totally right. The Malaza be expound. Probably Chief Mesa don't really wanna say it out. No, lo polo that this is how we're gonna have to work this out. The mga nata ta fansiga man mamatinas programa za tisinya ta tuli za dinancio Vice neni finono mo. We've been experiencing for quite some times. Like Chief Mesa mentioned, sinya buntiling niya pago 300,000, then definitely down the line, no, the next few months, we're almost zero.
I mean,
And-
even more concerning
and
was
and, and that is alarming for me because I always
100,000 and
question
then the
the
next day is 4,000. That's
yes, and we had the experience. Pues
Okay.
I totally get back to the command and usahan ni commission and something is not right in here, and then definitely when we push the issue out and I notice it, I feel we're coming out from the same seat that we guys are sitting down here, and I cannot tend to find this issue. Probably on the executive side, no, so there's Guaha na sinyaling niya no they freeze everything because of this new system right now. They can just shut down your account. No, I feel the way I look, I don't have any the real answer for it. Lo, if you can freeze your account and divert these funds for another priority, and then later on down the line, a PUBG huzongi within the next few months, back to his omo actual that naiziling niya. Go fifio na ko tsura ba bisangan ni sila nga masaki. Lo, I think it's appropriate na bisangan ni siya manasidbi sa lapi za then they think to replenish it back once everything settles down with a priority what the system that was given out. So, sige, naluan pa no vice ginigin na momento. Igual the mommy priority because the budget that the governor's proposal is to zero out our operational, and that's where we rely
yes.
our full 100% operation, especially on the medical side, and that's the scary part. As I mentioned, si Chief Mesagi earlier when the chairman is asking about the chunk is the highest, and one of the says the supplies. Just to let you guys know, that's the medical side, the medical supply that runs the operation of the ambulance. That's the chunk of probably 85 to 90% of those supplies are all medical. So just to let you guys know na Zangin, if we tend that they don't see in that way that that ambulance go out to rescue or to respond on an emergency basis, they go out bear with it. That's actually a risk for us that we're doing right now. So if we cannot buy that one, dangkulo na problema zanginti really rely na monen patatsuli, and we're relying. That's the reason why we are asking is on Mizo support to please us give us the flexibility on the revolving side because majority of the funds that are allocated masasangan is mostly medical supplies. That every time that you hear that ambulance run and cry, they spend out of that because they use the supply in that ambulance. Same as the suppression or the fire truck or any other no emergency vehicle response. So just to clarify that, no vice and chairman and the members, na inconsistent of seeing our revolving account really poke us in the eye. Na sinya bebin segwi, we tell the logistics to procure medical supplies to give us. That's why it's a mommy practice. Na if you have the funds, procure it 5 months ahead of supplies. So that way we don't want to have that no lack a monthly basis. If you can have that vendor give us a 5 month supply and store it in our facility, that was give us the leverage. So we feeling it na you might not see the funds tomorrow. So that's the reason why we were practicing
Pues
that kind of
mampus dongkulo nini no na problema sa tisinya pero operate sa mu department tagano especially sa gibanda ni safety.
exactly.
Okay, so
Mhm.
tisinya na pero falilingui sa lapig alumi account jangin esta gua planunya i department puro magastay sa lapig especially gibandan medical supplies.
Yes.
Jadi binata areglas tin na problema sa tisinya na ta continua
Hunggan.
no na klaseng practice jadi binata aregla ti man kaigi gwini patafangento sa tajuti or ta sangan audit sumotso gwesti nasisita ta comprendi offer siya problema
Mhm.
jata check ta madu ni ta aregla za munga na padedesis ti sati at the end of the day it's the people's gonna suffer.
Exactly.
Okay.
The dispensado
So this
na
is not about throwing anybody under the bus. This is about
Yes.
identifying what those challenges are, what the problems are. Let's stop sweeping all these issues under the rug, okay?
Yes.
We really need to address this and we really need to fix it
Exactly.
because no department can conduct its businesses or its operations if the funding has already been spoken for. And so there needs to be courtesy, hombre, some communication between the relevant departments, whoever, we just need to resolve this. The we need to get to the bottom of this
Yes,
and
por favor,
understand where,
ugaga dun mizo no, Vice.
okay,
Za
so
utunga na makat za go na kumikinto so on behalf ginigi komunidad ta. Za munga na después un tempo pa ifamagonta pata resibi pat sinanota pa sita tota geno huzong na tisinya ta saporta ininsisidad niya sa timanang sufficiente ambulance gwinahanya na medicat na supply galumi i facilidad i patatsogi no.
okay.
So no na mas no
So okay, so
una tritang kilo inasoko gitagini na.
okay, so thank you nin lagnus na informasyon sa stay commissioner gaya na uungu, sa necesitatarek la. So knowing that that's an issue, what steps have been taken to address the issue, whether it's with budget, OMB, finance, or OIT? How can we fix this? Or
Well-
what actions has been taken?
Well, actually, the consistent of communication is the most paramount. Gizahamina is zanginenlin na tumapapaizo at the consistent i often gumagagi galumi i account. Definitely, na I holler to the chief na make sure that you communicate with finance and find out what's going on because there is a priority in next
Sure.
in line to do.
But
No.
based on that, I feel like we're being reactive. So what are we doing to ensure that the process is consistent, right? And that we can rely on these numbers when you open the account. Most importantly, when different user IDs open those the system and you see different balances.
To answer your question, Senator, we have made arrangements to sit down with SOF's office to make sure that everything that we're inputting into our Muna system is the same way they're doing it, so that way the numbers can match. Because if I do it in a separate way and they do it in a different way, then of course we're not going to get the
So help me
sequence.
understand with the Munis system then. So typically, right, it's the department that initiates what goes into the system for payment processing, right? So you enter the data, you upload the invoices, and then then finance receives that and they do whatever it is that they need to do. When it goes the other way around and the monies are taken out of the account, and I'm assuming that finance initiates that transfer out of your account, does it flag you guys on your system to approve?
No,
So
they
there's
won't.
an override.
Yes, they will not. They're not approved at all because they're the ones approving. We requested, they did the approval. Lo zanginilina, and then and those people that are submitting it, they have to find out there is funding before they even process it.
Right, that's on
Right.
your end, but
Yeah.
when it's the other way around, doesn't the expenditure authority have to is somewhat notified to, that there's a transaction taking place and that you need approval?
Walay senator na may na klaro na na klase zanggen no manholomit gi sistema na gi system. All of a sudden we know that our system we can't even access the system. That's the issue here that I was mentioning earlier. We tend to find out there's 100,000 yesterday, and we had a plan for tomorrow to procure supplies for medical. All of a sudden you can't even access it sa malak izomo system, izomo account.
Sige na na problema
So
sa stagwa
that's where the
obligations and
issues at,
income.
and I was telling the chief na make sure now you work with finance. How can we mitigate this issue? Because majority gi kada man hano huzong ganona, we always tend to find out we tend to find out down the line we're gonna have an issue. So it's like we're experiencing that. So,
So
we
you-
need to have that
Okay, so you said that you've been
mutual,
experiencing
more
this for quite some
experience
time.
of
How long has this been
communication.
happening?
There's just call a couple of times, not regularly, but it's only on a specific time. But I cannot say often what is specific, but I can assume something that's when they kind of lock something out. Low, I can probably you and the commissioner also can have that experience to explain it to you guys.
So I do have a communication with finance. So again, for example, like one issue is that our utility está por disconnect ka sa mga utility. So jigi naman they're urging us na por favor, please make sure that you go online and pay your bills on time. And we have, and we were informed now we have to, consolidate our bills. So that's one reason they had to do that, because stay CUC, they're not going to wait and they're going to disconnect our utilities. So I had a communication with finance with that.
Okay, that's specific to the utilities, but what about the other stuff?
We noticed na ni Pogo when they introduced from the JD Edworks to the Munis, kulang there's a glitch in between the those na system ni. So I was informed by finance na they have to make sure that they check on both sides JD Edworks and Munis, because Munis is a new system. So they want to make sure that those two are jiving. That is why sometimes when they told me that this is the balance that we have, and then the few months later it changed, the number changes. It's again as the chief was there.
So when the
So-
migration was done from JD Edwards to Munis, my understanding is that the ending balances were transferred over to Munis. Help me understand, what is the use of you guys going into JD Edwards when all these ending balances were transferred over to Munis? That's a running balance going forward, that every time you subtract your expenses, it should have a running balance. So what is the purpose of going into JD Edwards and comparing and all that? Help me understand that.
They want to make sure that we have the fund,
They want to make sure that you
that
have.
we have the fund in our account, in our
In your-
revolving account.
Okay, so then you can check the balances in two ways, right? One is in the system, in the Munis, and then other one is in your actual bank account, right? So do you guys have access to your bank accounts to view your daily balances?
No,
Why?
We created a system in our office
It's
where we
revolving fund
actually,
account, so it has a. Go ahead.
what we do is we created a, what they call a receiving report, or collection report, as far as how much we're expected to receive. So that's what we rely on.
Okay, so you are recording and tracking your balances independently
Collections.
of your collections independently of what is showing in the system, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I'll move forward with the rest of the stuff. I guess I would like to start with my line of questions with understanding that there are two revolving fund accounts, right, under your department. And do you know what those balances are as of today?
Well, when I printed out my ledger, for example, the ambulance revolving fund shows that we have a balance or available funds of 89,330. For our enforcement, it shows that we have a remaining balance of about 69,000. And our our fire lane, about 65,000.
Okay. And then I also understand that you guys receive federal grants, correct?
A few, yes.
Okay. And would you happen to know what those balances are as of today? Total balance. I believe you guys have about 5 awards under federal grants. What is the total balance as of today for all 5 accounts or awards?
For our federal grants, as far as balance concerned, for operation, for training, equipment and stuff like that, it's pretty much already obligated for purchase. What's I think we're pending a renewal, right? But we'll get back to you in regards to the actual
Okay.
number.
So the total remaining balance is completely obligated. There's no room for any other expenses.
Pretty much, because when we submitted our package, it's already identified what the
Okay.
funds are for.
Are any of those federal grants allow for operation expenses, such as your?
Specifically for the purpose of the grant, the
Okay,
program
so
itself.
strictly for the activities under those grants. Okay. So knowing that, and knowing that the governor's submission pretty much zeroed out your operation, you are relying on your revolving fund revolving fund accounts to fund your operation, correct? And I know that in your presentation earlier, you outlined what are some of your spending plan, pretty much, right? Using the revolving fund. And let me start with this then. What is your average annual collections or balances for those two revolving accounts? So every year, you know, what is the average amount of money that's in that you start with?
So for the 1953 revolving account for the ambulance, we're averaging about 40,000 a month
Oh,
from the Medicaid
40,000
and
time.
Medicare.
Okay, so 40,000 a month.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a rough estimate, ma'am,
Sure.
because it depends on the submission of
Yeah,
our
that's
billing.
fine.
As far as the enforcement, they could make a collection of close to, I won't give or take, about 30,000
A month.
a month.
Okay.
Again, with the current situation, that numbers could drop the following month.
Sure. And then your fire lane?
The fire lane, that's pretty new to us, and it's not very active. So I'll say average a month, maybe about not more than 500.
Okay. So that's immaterial. Is there a reason why it's not active? Like,
We're in the process of obtaining a contract for the towing and storage services.
and when do you anticipate that to
Right
Take
now,
effect.
the award was given out to one of the contractor. So we were just preparing the contract packets to
Uh,
submit to procurement and
and
supply.
I'm assuming that the payment for that contractor has already been obligated for that contract?
Not
Or
necessarily obligated because fees will be paid into a treasury.
sure,
That's
but
when we receive
okay,
payments
so
from
when
the.
you issue the award, right, there's an amount attached to that contract. What is the funding source for that contract?
It should be the account for filing,
But you only have, how much is the contract for?
not more than 50,000.
Not more than 50,000, but you only have, you're generating about $500 a month. So how would that fund the 50,000?
That's the question that I brought up to procurement, because when the proposed contract was done, there's an indication of funding source,
Okay, so what was the funding
and the
source?
funding source, the present funding source in that account is not sufficient to meet the not to exceed the 50,000.
Was there a budget certification with before it went to procurement?
Um, that's the question that I brought up to procurement, and they said that we could still fix the number within that not to exceed 50,000.
Again, that's very
So
concerning.
yes, and because for me, I was thinking that they should leave that open, because actually, what's going to happen is when the citation is issued, that funding source would be paid into treasury. So as we receive payments, that's when we can pay out the contractor based on what we receive.
So you are getting into a contract without having proper funding and a funding source to ensure that before you get into executing that contract, that I don't understand what we're doing here.
So
We're creating
let me try to explain it. So there's a special account
I understand that.
dedicated for the filing.
Okay.
So when we requested for a contract proposal or an RFP or what ITB, at that time there was no funding in that account. There was probably only, if I'm not mistaken, $1,000.
Okay.
So I brought that up to procurement, because I even myself I had that question: how can we have a fixed number in the contract where which we don't have that amount in that account? But according to procurement, they can still go ahead and
Okay, who from procurement?
the director and what's her name? Geraldine Cruz.
So they said that you can go ahead and move forward with the
The
procurement.
ITB.
Okay.
Because we started with the ITB.
Okay.
So
And then, so is the contract finalized?
no, not yet. We just got a bidding award to to one of the contractor. So I'm preparing the contract packets.
Okay. And is that the normal practice for when you go to procurement to get a contract? Help me understand what the process is. So you have a request for
So
purchase,
first,
right?
first and foremost, the commissioner requests for ITB.
Okay.
Once procurement approve or accept the ITB, that's when we submit the scope of work of what's necessary services that the ITB should announce. So once they do the announcement, bidders, contractors will submit their proposal based on the scope of work. So whoever wins the submission of their proposal based on resources and pricing, that will be the winning bidder.
Is there an amount already kind of set aside of what the department is willing to pay for that particular contract?
The funding that would pay the contractor will come out from based on what the violators pays into the treasury account. Which is there's a dedicated special account for that specific operations.
So I'm referring to the towing services that you mentioned earlier, right? You said you guys are in the process of trying to get into a contract with a towing company to provide the service. What was there an amount, an estimated amount already, decided on uh, how much to
Fee, how much fee the
Yeah.
yes, there is.
So the 50,000. So you guys were willing to pay the contractor $50,000 to provide the towing services.
That's based on collections.
And what? Okay, so
There is a specific fees already
so you
dedicated.
guys have a forecast of how many towing you guys are gonna towing fees you're gonna collect,
That depends on violations.
right? So how did you guys come up with what was the basis?
To answer your question, Senator, there is no actual figures set aside to as far as when we do the ITB. We just rely on the contractors to be fair and honest in regards to their submission of bid. And then we try to figure out if that source or that amount is capable for us to sustain payment based on the collection that we receive.
So on the contract, is it a fixed monthly payment or is it based on the number of towing that they provide, the service that they provide?
Yes, based on the service they provide.
Okay, so the contract may be for $50,000, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna pay a certain amount, a fixed amount every month. It's
Yes,
based on the
yes,
number
not
of
necessarily.
towing that they submit to you guys for. Okay.
It depends on the submission of their services provided.
Okay. I'm still concerned that you guys move forward with the procurement without proper funding certification for budget and the funding source. But that's an issue that you guys need to figure out, and I hope procurement is listening, because I don't know if this is a violation of any regulation under procurement.
Um, Senator, that's the question that I brought up to procurement. And according to procurement, they got a legal advice from their legal counsel.
Okay.
So
I mean, it's their neck on the chopping block. So
Well, Senator, dinansya ito hilaling niya. And that's the first thing in facing. Often na para tanay price na itaza sa lapi. No, but tanay contract. Well, but they kind of overrule either mommy's side the linya. We have to go on ITB.
okay.
So we just have to follow either no
And
procedure. No.
I'm not. Please know that I'm not against what you guys are trying to do.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure that we are not getting ourselves into deficit that's unnecessary and could have been prevented and avoided. Most importantly, that we follow the rules and regulations with regards to procurement.
Right.
So if part of the regulation is to ensure that there's the budget certification and the funding source is identified, then that's fine with me. I am not here to, I don't know what your needs are. You guys know that. I'm just
Yeah.
making sure that, regulations are being complied with.
Right. And
Okay.
that's what we're doing. We just comply with the regulation from procurement.
Okay.
No.
So I feel like I'm already doing more of an oversight, and that's not
Yeah,
the
yeah.
intent of this budget
Well,
hearing.
but it's good that we're giving more clarity, Firelin, and at the same time, the reason why it's kind of stagnant at this time
Yes.
is a revitalization of that project down in Garapan.
Okay.
But once that thing is completed, we're gonna have the full enforcement of
Okay.
that new what's that enforcement of Firelin.
Okay. And
No.
I am being mindful because I was reminded not to, what was the word? Lecture. Okay. But I'm sorry. It just comes out. As I hear information, it just comes out. And then this is in no way trying to, you know, um, start anything negative. It's sorry. So moving along with the budget hearing. Again, as I said earlier, Commissioner, you outlined your spending plan, right, based on the revolving fund account, and just off of the top of my head, as you started mentioning every line item and the amounts that are associated with those line items, I mean, I don't even think you have sufficient funds in your revolving fund to even, you know, often carry out your spending plan. You talk about, I think, a truck, right? A fire truck. You I mean, there was a whole list of items, which I'm not saying that I'm pretty sure they are very much needed and very critical and essential to your operation. But realistically, your budget was zero funded, and you are relying on your revolving fund to pay for your existing your operations right now. And I'm just curious, like, how are you gonna be able to accomplish that?
Thank you, ma'am. So we're so fortunate na Gagi NMHC, CDBG, and CDBGR. So that's one of the approach in this as we submitted our justification.
Okay.
That's
So are
one.
you saying that then the spending plan that you outlined earlier is gonna be funded partially, probably, by some of these
Those grants
grants
from
that
yeah.
you've
Yes,
mentioned?
ma'am.
Okay, so
Uh-huh.
it's not necessarily then that it's the revolving fund account that's gonna
Mm.
fund these, right? Because just based on the information that you provided, you said the spending plan was based off of the ambulance.
Mm. And
And
it's an indirect approach to show you guys that I'm asking for help.
okay,
No?
thank you. Okay, so um, you probably said this earlier, but what is the department's total expenditure to date? About 1.4 million, correct? For all divisions. So in under Department of Fire, what is the total expenditure to date? Yeah.
Right now, it's indicating that we spend 2.9 mil.
Oh, 2.9 million. And this, because you guys were zero funded for
Yes.
this fiscal year, what is the funding source for those expenses? The revolving fund?
No, this is our year-to-date budget expense. Personnel's only.
Oh, okay. Okay, so excluding personnel, what is your operational expenditures to date?
Based on the revolving funds expenditure, that's, yeah, that's the 1.4.
The 1.4 was coming out of the revolving fund.
Correct.
Okay. But okay. And then there was the mention of enforcement. Can you elaborate on the scope of what that enforcement is?
It's the Sinamay Fire Safety Code.
Fire safety code. So does that, so I think I saw like residential, commercial, stuff like that.
Oh,
Is
this,
it
this is for a business establishment.
it's for business establishments? So do you
Yes.
guys go and inspect every single business
Businesses.
establishment?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And then there was a mention of professional services for $197,000. What was that for?
Not 197,000. I was referring to our medical director. It's about 10,000 a month.
I believe I heard professional services, 197,000. I mean, can you just give us the gist of what those professional services are?
That can probably be for our ZO system, our medical director, and
So your medical director is under professional services?
I believe so. I'm going to have to look into minutes to see a breakdown. I just have the year-to-date expense.
Why would your medical director be under professional
Like I said, I'm going to
services?
have to go into the Muni system to see what it actually pays. But for sure, I know it's for the Muni system. I'm sorry, the ZO system.
What is that?
That's the data collection for our ambulance runs.
Data collection? What type of data collection?
It's bio information that we patient assistant.
Okay. And how much are you guys paying for that per month?
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 18,000. I believe 18,000 a month.
18. So this is a recurring expense.
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so this definitely needs to be incorporated into your budget. We talked about trainings and recertifications. I didn't see any of that in the proposed budget. And if let me ask, I guess, for training, I'm more concerned about the recertifications because I'm assuming that these are required, mandatory recertifications. How much in total would you say that you spend on recertifications?
About 3,000.
Just 3,000 for all your?
I'm sorry, 12,000.
So
That's for all Siena fire personnel.
including Tinian and Rhoda?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, 12K. And the training. Okay, so under recertifications, are there any associated costs with that, such as travel?
Unless we're gonna send our instructors to Guam, but we send our facilitator.
Okay, so what's
here.
the plan for FY25? Is the plan to bring somebody here or send somebody there and then come back and recertify? I guess what I just want to make sure that we capture those costs
Mhm.
in the budget because it's required, right?
Mm.
So we want to make sure that that we allocate funding for that. We want to make sure that your staff are properly,
We
trained and
we
certified.
prefer to bring the instructor so that way we can take advantage of the number of personnel that can
And
avail
when
to
you
that
when you bring
training.
the instructor here, is Tinian and Rhoda gonna be
That was
okay?
included, yeah.
Okay.
That's CNMI.
And whenever those things, because during our dialogue with the budget hearing in Rhoda, we sometimes we were told when these guys come here so you're saying the travel is included in this recertification for Rhoda and Tinian?
Yes, ma'am.
So travel as in airfare, per diem, transportation, and stuff like that.
Yes.
How much? So 12,000 will cover all of that.
No, it all depends on the training
Okay,
that
so
we
we're
have.
gonna need some
Yes.
details
Okay.
as to the number of personnel that we will be bringing from Tinian and Rhoda to include their airfare, their per diem, their transportation and stuff like
Lodging.
that. Okay, that way we can properly fund that. And then the instructor from Guam, we need to make sure also that we capture all the associated costs for travel, and then give us whatever that total is, so that we can make sure that we provide funding for that. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
For the trainings, are these trainings required or recommended? And
They're
what-
all required.
they're all required? Okay. And how many trainings are we looking to provide for fiscal year 2025? I mean, I know you had a whole list of things up there. So I'm assuming that, or I don't want to assume. I would like to hear from you. How much is that training gonna cost?
Based on the because there are not only the EMTs, but I have the hazmat crew. I have the
Yes. For the overall department, how much in training cost would that be?
we'll get back to you for the
Okay.
exact number.
Please do. No, so we can make sure that we appropriate for those expenses. The deployment to California, Southern California, I would like to commend your team and your department for participating and providing assistance, to other places. But I would like to know what would be the funding source for that.
That will be covered under the Forest Service,
For
100%.
which is it a grant or?
It's almost like the military deployment.
Okay,
once
so
our
it's not
people are
coming out of your guys'.
No.
Okay. And then there was a mention of you said that you guys had just completed your advisory council meeting with all three districts. Can you just elaborate what that?
So what they do, this group is that they gather together from Rhode and Tinan, and they discuss what are the accomplishments that we did with the grants, what are the challenges, and
Okay.
then we gather that together because we had to report that because we had an annual meeting for the grantees meeting, and we reported to them
Okay.
about our accomplishment, challenges, and what can they do to help us out.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. And then I think I believe the chair has already asked about the processing time for these ambulance billings, right? And it takes about a couple months by the time you guys see, or it could be several months. Do you understand what's taking? I know that you said it's Medicaid, but have you guys talked to Medicaid to see how we can reduce the number of, the processing time? Because that's ridiculous. I mean, you guys are relying on these funds to use for your operation. If it's taking months, several months at that, I mean, how can you properly run your department? And then by the time those payments come in, it's already something probably lapsing, and it's going into the next fiscal year. So has there been any dialogue between the department and finance and whoever else is involved in making sure that you guys get your payments at least monthly and not several months?
It's upon availability of funds on their part because they are, I guess, waiting to receive funds. I'm not sure how they receive their funds. All I know is that it's upon availability of funds available to among them.
Okay. So it's pending availability of funds coming from the government, the central government. I mean, it's okay. We can say it.
I'm not too sure, ma'am. Into such time, I do get those definite answers, but it's according to them, it's just based on availability of funds.
I mean, that's just unacceptable. We cannot operate like this,
I
where
agree.
you're dependent on somebody else, and it takes several months to, everything takes money,
Correct.
and so we cannot run our government this way. Where, okay, I'm not lecturing. What is the monthly average billing for ambulance? You guys already said it's about 40,000. And so, going back to what was submitted on the budget, again, all the other divisions were zeroed out, or zero requests from coming from the department, and I think, as explained earlier, it's because one of the division takes the bulk of it, and that's kind of how you guys operate. So I will go to the logistic, I believe, is the division that has the budget requests. And so I'd like to go down the line with you guys. Uh, Overtime compensation. So, have you guys incurred any overtime this fiscal year? Yes.
Yes, we have.
And how much in overtime have you guys incurred year to date?
If I can find it somewhere. For overtime expense for this fiscal year, right now we have spent is that correct? Well, 225.
225,000?
Yes.
Okay. And so, knowing that, and the department didn't requested zero for FY25, is there a reason why?
We cannot request for overtime because we don't know exactly how much overtime we're getting.
Right, but there's an estimate, right? I mean,
Well-
looking at your actuals historically from last year to the year prior, you kind of gauge yourself as to how much overtime you guys incur on an annual basis, and so it would be irresponsible, knowing that you guys incur overtime on a regularly, to not request for funding for FY25, because where else is that money going to come from if you guys didn't put it in your budget request?
I thought we're not lecturing.
Okay, but I'm trying to make sure that you guys get the funding that you guys
So,
need. Overtime is a legal obligation. Once overtime is incurred, you guys are obligated to pay. So we want to make sure that there's funding. It's not that I'm not lecturing. I'm trying to make sure that you guys get the funding for the required operational needs. And overtime is a very serious matter. Whenever somebody incurs overtime, please, you guys need to make sure you guys are paying those overtime.
Understand. Again, we can only do an estimate, and because overtime is pretty much not a
It's
foreseen,
not set, yes.
it's an unforeseen status.
Yes.
But as far as putting an estimate cost in our budget, we will make that submission on our next year's budget. As far as the budget submission, we have not submitted anything. For
Okay, so can you provide us with an estimate today?
Sure,
Or-
we can.
Okay.
If I may chime in on that, no Senator, no Vice, the 6 point some million that actually been requested is part of that the partial of this overtime that was gonna be incurred into that. However, the budget submission from the governor was last, so it entails us na mapos that ni Edu Pagos ni tintingo ko kwanto na estimation para overtime law. Historically, since the inception of fire and DPS back then, 1,000 uli na 1,000 na overtime kada sakang guay, no?
At sige na,
No.
nalalakuan.
Pues
Tatungas
it-
ta na kada year
Unggan.
overtime. Necesita ta.
Unggan. Pues 6 point some million na dasing teos inside gaygi zoloki gaygi no gialom estimation para kinover overtime galomeno.
So just under emergency services, your actual overtime cost for last fiscal year was about $103,000.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm really concerned when I see zero, because we know for a fact that you guys cannot. It's beyond your control. Let's
Unggan
just
na.
put it that way,
Inansya.
So we just need to make sure that there's
Yeah,
some
di nan
funding
siya, no,
there to
sinya
address.
tapigad no Vice, we can always put figures in there no low estimation probably we will not sufficiently but roughly we can have an estimation that yearly we can spend like that, but it all depends how the
Yes.
emergency
Yes.
arise, no?
Some funding is better than no funding.
Yeah,
Is what I'm
di nan
saying.
siya,
Okay.
di nan siya.
Okay, next we go down to repairs and maintenance, and there was a request of 200,000. So can you elaborate a little bit more on what that request is?
Thank you, Senator. So we're comparing our immersion products than the regular vehicle. So it costs more to get oil filter.
Mhm.
It costs more for the diesel. It costs more for the tires for the fire engine. So that is why we came up with that amount. Then even to just to do a service for the vehicle.
Sure. So, I mean, I'm sure you have a basis for the 200,000, right? Is it based on the number of fleet that you have? And then how often they get repairs and maintenance? Obviously, they gotta go in for maintenance and service every 3 months or every 3,000 miles, something like that. But there has to be a basis on how you came up with the 200,000. So,
So we base ourselves on the mileage on the vehicle.
right. So
No.
how many vehicles do you have under your department?
We have a total of four, two fire engine with the 1,000 gallon capacity, two 300 gallon, four ambulance, one rescue rapid response vehicle.
So, okay. So, how much do you spend on repairs and maintenance on a monthly basis for all your vehicles?
On a monthly basis,
Yes.
so to answer your question in regards to repairs and maintenance, it's pretty much estimated based on last year's expenditure, and then we try to buff it up maybe a couple $1,000s more because of the
Okay.
changing prices.
Okay.
But that's how we get our estimate
Okay.
costs.
So how much are you spending on a monthly basis?
146,000.
146 a month?
I'm sorry. Is this one? Oh, I'm sorry. So it's showing here that we spend about 146,000 a year.
Okay, but I want to know how much you guys spend on a month because that would be my basis.
To give you an exact number of how much we
It
spend a
could be
month,
an estimate.
an estimate.
Yes.
Again, I don't want to get my numbers wrong. The one in charge with fleets and maintenance.
We're looking at 12,000 a month.
Okay, so 12,000 times 12. So that's about $144,000 a year in just repairs and maintenance, and then a little buffer for contingencies. Okay. Under communications, you requested 84,000. Can you elaborate on that?
On communications, that includes internet services. So again, it was based on what we spent on the previous years. And as far as what we,
What's your monthly communications expense?
we're about 2,072.
Okay. So comes out to about a little bit over 24,000. You're asking for 84,000. That's about a $60,000 difference. What is the variance?
The one I just gave you, that's strictly just for the telephone.
Okay,
As
so
far as
total communications.
I don't
of,
have that with me right now. I'll get back to you.
Okay. For fuel and lubricant, 190,000. What is your average monthly fuel expense for all your fleet?
13,000. About 13,503.
Okay. Okay, that's about 162,000, but with room for inflation and other contingencies. Okay. And then your utilities, you are requesting for $180,000.
Does that, if that's not inclusive with water and sewer, so with
I would assume utilities consist of both.
so about 37,000.
So 37,000 times 12.
469.
404. So, okay. So you're only, so what did you say it was? 32,000?
No, it's 37,469.
469. Okay. So that comes out to about 449,000, almost $500,000, and you're only requesting for 180,000. So, uh, how are you going to pay for the rest? That still leaves you about $269,000 that would be unpaid or delinquent.
We rely on our revolving funds.
Okay. Okay, I want this budget to be a responsible budget. So you really need to identify what your true costs are, what you truly need to operate your operations, right? So your utilities, like you cannot, that's an important expense. You cannot forgo that. If you don't pay it, you get disconnected. So you have to capture the true cost of what's really costing you guys on an annual basis and request for that. These are non-negotiable items. You cannot say, well, our cost is 449,000, but you know what? We'll just ask $180,000 and we'll figure out the remaining $269,000 whenever. That's irresponsible. So I guess not lecturing, but I would recommend to please submit to this body a more responsible budget with narratives and make sure these are the critical and essential expenses that are non-negotiable. Like these are absolute expenses that you need, so that when we deliberate on the very scarce resources that we have, we would take these into consideration, and we put in our minds that these are non-negotiable items that has to be funded. Okay, overtime, utilities, medical supplies, por favor, na prioritize ano siya. I think everything else can be based on the revolving fund account, right? But for your essential stuff, please make sure that those are prioritized. So that's all I have, Chair. I'm so sorry I took long, but I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Revolta.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, or almost good afternoon. First of all, Commissioner, can you introduce your panel here and what exactly their role is?
Thank you, ma'am. On my right, Assistant Chief Jesse Mesa is in charge of admin. Assistant Chief Stanis Santos is in charge of fire prevention and arson investigation. Manning Cabrera, Chief Logistics and Support. Acting Chief Corino Rita is in charge of the Emergency Services Division. Chief Blas Gizay Muehedi, Emergency Medical Services Division. Acting Chief Post Somoto, he's in charge of training. Then Deputy Commissioner, that's Steve Missing.
Okay, helps me understand what the individuals do. Secondly, I'd like to ask for a copy of your expense reports that you guys are referring to there, because we don't see those numbers. Also, a copy of your statement and a copy of this presentation. If you can email it today to any of our two LAs available in this room. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Appreciate that. You mentioned that you hope to have an academy set up or running this year or maybe next year. When do you anticipate that?
It all depends. It all depends on the funding, ma'am.
All
Pwede po
depends.
din ginilangit, we can open up an academy.
Yeah, because I'm trying to wrap my head around that. Depends on the funding. And it also depends if you have the FTEs to accommodate them after.
Yes, ma'am.
So please take that in consideration. Please, as much as you need personnel, and I want to say thank you to your personnel for wearing more than one hat, really, for many, including Tinian and Rhoda. But I think priority, if you guys are going to run an academy, I hope you guys take into consideration the full cost of that and whether you have the FTEs to accommodate them after graduation from an academy. In budgeting, this is our frustration. We hope, and this is not just for defense, this is for all departments. We hope that in your personnel expenses, you anticipate those who will be retiring, those who will be, those are vacancies. If you can somehow analyze your personnel costs and include some of those turnovers, it really goes a long way into helping your department and any department, because that's what I see lacking in all the departments. We don't know who's going to retire, but at least anticipate those. And I hope you guys incorporate it. And also, I hope that departments, this yearly budget thing is very difficult. If you have a 5-year plan, it would help the legislature, it would help the government, it would help OMB plan out maybe some of your outreach programs could be prioritized at a different year because you have a higher priority this year. So if you have a 5-year plan, I would like to recommend that you try that. We're talking about revolving funds, and do you know who the expenditure authority is of your revolving funds?
Go, ma'am.
Okay, I just wanted to see if you knew. Because you're mentioning, and also with these discrepancies with the revolving fund account, I personally keep a spreadsheet in my office because Munis is unreliable at this point. Not all the features for reconciliation are in place, I think. So I keep a spreadsheet in my office, and I don't know why departments don't do that. It would make sense because obviously there's discrepancies on a daily basis, as Chief Mesa has mentioned. You open it one day, you have 400,000, next day you have 4,000. And keep your receipts so that you have a basis to reconcile with finance or OMB. I'm not sure, Chief Mesa, do you do that in your office? Do you keep a running spreadsheet just for your information?
Not specifically a running spreadsheet, but I do take notes of when I open Munis and how much I see and what's available on specific dates. I just recently started to do that because of the fact that every time we go back and try to say, hey, this is what we're finding, they said, since when? So that's when I realized that I need to start tracking dates and time.
Yeah, a spreadsheet would go a long way to help
Yes,
you with that. You mentioned that you average about 40,000 a month on these ambulance runs. The revenue for that, is that correct? Did I hear correctly?
Yes, ma'am.
Which averages 480,000 a year, if my calculation is correct. 40,000 times 12, right? But earlier, Chief Mesa, you mentioned that you average $1 million in revenue from that. How is
That
that?
was an estimated based on how much during our weekly meetings with the data collection. I asked
Okay.
them to give me pretty much an understanding on how much we collect and how much we collect every month, and then what is our average every year.
And they
So
came up with $1 million.
just an average. This is an estimated cost.
And
to be
who-
specific, she's on leave right now due to
Is that a part of your DFM staff or finance?
that's part of my admin staff.
Ambulance staff.
Admin,
Admin, I'm sorry.
and she's on leave because she just gave birth.
Well, congratulations to her. But she gave you an average of 1 million, but she also gave you an average of 40,000, right? You got these figures from her?
40,000 that was given by the commissioner, but I believe Chief Bloss can give you.
Okay, go ahead.
So we do average about a million every year. The bulk of that money comes from Medicaid, but due to the according to Medicaid, their backlog and also the source of funding from the government.
Federal government.
I'm not sure where, if it's government or cinema. I mean federal or cinema, but the bulk of the money comes from Medicaid. Sometimes it goes up to 300 some thousand to 4.
Okay, I'm aware of the delay from Medicaid
'Cause
payments. It
on
takes about
Medicare, we
4 to
collected
6
an
months.
average for Medicare, we collect about 27,000 a month.
Medicaid.
Yeah, Medicare.
Oh, Medicare.
Yeah, and private HMOs we collect about $5,000, but the bulk of the money comes from Medicaid. So
Okay.
that's why we average sometimes 800 some thousand a year or close to $1 million.
Okay. Deputy Meskin, or let me go back to Chief Mesa. You mentioned that you normally don't include your overtime expenses in your budget submission because you don't know how much exactly you're going to expend per year. Did I hear that correctly?
What I did mention, it's an unforeseen amount of hours that we can anticipate, but based on our report for the past 3 years, because of COVID, we saw a spike on overtime.
Sure.
Then after COVID, we saw a decrease on overtime from an average of 23,000, an average expenditure on overtime per pay period. We dropped down to 17,000 per pay period in 2023. Now in 2024, we see an average of 13,000 paid bi-weekly from overtime. So to give you an actual number, we can just give you a base, but as far as submission budget reports and includes to overtime, I have not one yet to experience that based on my number of experiences being part of this command staff or submission of budget. So now that I have knowledge in that we can and we should, you would see this in the futures to come.
But Deputy Meskin also mentioned that the 6.2 accommodates the anticipated overtime. So we wouldn't want you to double report because that's not an accurate budget.
Understood. I'm just saying futures to come, not the current budget submission.
Yes, yes. And going back to this overtime, you mentioned an average of, the 23,000 decreasing to 17,000, decreasing to 13,000 per month in FY24. But and currently your OT year to date is an average of 22,500 per month based on previous statements made here. Your OT year to date is approximately 225 for the last 10 months, which in budget projections will bring you up to 270,000 by the end of this fiscal year. And it's important to have these information, but in Rhoda, we just concluded our budget hearings there in Rhoda, and they asked for 100K for their annual overtime expenses, but they couldn't satisfactorily justify that. So I'm not sure how you guys communicate with Tinian and Rhoda with respect to the whole entire defense budget. I understand they're municipal governments, but to some extent, defense Saipan also has some, I think, jurisdiction over the resident, departments in Tinian and Rhoda. So going back to Tinian and Rhoda, how in all your operational expenses, your supply expenses, how much of that is allocated for Tinian and Rhoda? Do you even put that aside for Tinian and Rhoda?
So what we do, ma'am, is that
Or
we
is it just whenever they ask?
so whatever medical supplies that we have, we included them.
Okay,
Um,
okay. Understood. I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you, Senator Balta. Just to acknowledge Senator Paul's presence today. Anyone else for the first round? Recognize Senator Hofschneider.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Commissioner, and your team. Deb, welcome back to the Senate. Just maybe more on operational side. I pretty much got um, all the information based on what the two esteemed senators have questioned about your submission. No, but Mr. Chairman, I think, and I'm glad the OMB is here. I think it's important that we must have finance in these meetings heretofore, because a lot of the questions that were answered has to do with finance, as far as balance, whether it's revolving fund or federal funds or what have you, and to include procurement and supply, is what Mr. Santos said earlier, was trying to explain. So, if I may suggest moving forward, just to be fair with the gentleman and the agencies as well, and just to cross check. Um, Also, I want to just say it for the record that we do gave the governor 100% reprogramming authority this year. So he has the authority, as he see fit, as an administrator for the entire CNMI, or the chief executive, to manage the funds. so just moving forward, put the hot shot, no, Commissioner. Ta na oportunidade ito tota, no, po participate lo. Can you just share to the committee how's the review and the selection process is being made?
Thank you, sir. So every year, the fire service team will come here, and they will do a pack test, and that's to include all three islands.
What is that?
The pack test.
Often, no?
It's a STG 40-pound. They put a pega in a backpack, and you have to walk 2 miles for certain, 3 miles for certain time to meet the passing requirement. No, put some and then they went to the training, and there's different stages of training in Gibandani. In the past, they were only doing mop up. No, with their training that they have progressed na. Now most of our cinema team are mangagistagi initial attack, which now they go out and fight the fire. So I received a request order on the 15th of this month, and they're requesting for personnel. So I guess they exhausted their team already. So after the training, that's when we included the civilian. Kind of majority we recruit civilian. So when this team are deployed, they're paid under the federal rate. So it's 100% coverage.
So when you say civilian, ako kumikilig mo?
Tagi private sectors.
So it's not necessarily just
Not necessarily just the firefighters,
Okay.
but our firefighters are holding the position. Gibonan ni strike team.
So how many of your firefighters have actually left,
Right now we have 19.
that left?
No, not. They requested for 2 team, but unfortunately we cannot provide them the request because of the manpower issues and funding. So we had to drop down the numbers. So majority posts, the civilians are going, and that way when they go to, they're gonna meet their training requirement with our firefighters.
I'm still kind of confused. So you don't have any active defense personnel that went?
Yes.
You have?
Uh-huh.
How many of them?
About 11 put total.
And, did we source out from Rhoda and Tinian if they have any?
We tried, but unfortunately, no, Senator, we're tied with funding. So-
If I I want to ask to avail fan programa kumugata gini so we have, it's good too for our firefighters on Rhoda and Tinian to
Yes.
kind of get the sort of the day-to-day they go out and they get trained as well, and there's always going to be a response, and they're going to be reaching for you for your office. So con respecto be faiseno sa para mo na fan inclulusot luta dan Tinian ang intrebe todza Za koskiang talo fa na request gini ni US Forest Service no tanay dito totota tunina no. Okay, pues you're true and I more so on operational side is the Munis versus JDE. Tamano talo, can you just Mr. Mesa, can you allow us to understand the process and what is the timetable usually for a request to get a, let's say for example the contractor is old, like AT&E or Docomo or CUC for that matter. What's the turnaround time for the time that Commissioner Pua requests and then it's actually delivered payment?
That usually, as soon as they do their review, if they get the notice today, within maybe 2 or 3 days, they'll be in the system already.
But that means they get paid.
Oh, you're talking about paying vendors?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
No,
not too. I'm not too sure.
if I may, Chair, you process it, then when the PO comes out, was atsugi actual, vendor atsugi actual performance of what services. They need to do the performance invoice coming back again the office, and then that's where we submit it to finance, and it gets 30 days for payment. So that leaves out probably those meses by the time you receive your actual payment. Yeah, that's the procedure now that they following in finance.
Yeah, the reason why I'm asking Commissioner and Dep, guaha no federal funds in extended paluta dan tinian para operations, no? Like
Tuloy tempo. Yeah. And then let me just clarify back retract didi tati about the yung sa sampo di mo hasher or the pack test. Definitely that invitation is being offered down to Tinian and Rhoda. Unfortunately, only Rhoda respond as one uno umalum that participate. Now the last training that they had that EG group naman matu taza Tinian matu mogi was probably it's also about funding issue and also invited and to let you know na jangin matu na program is also spread out to the civilian because actually that program is also to reach the outreach for civilian, not necessarily Saipan, Kintodo, Tinians, and Luta. So out of the 3 islands, only uno at Luta no respond para fatu para utsuli ido na test. And I know sometimes dangin para under civilian, sometimes you have to you go on your own expense to qualify that pack test But we always invite. They always invite Tinian and Rhoda for their own fire personnel for the matter. So last time I don't believe Montisia already De La Cruz sent some of his personnel down here for different issues. Maybe it's only a lack of manpower and those other things. It might comes to that play. Okay. And then going back to Immunis, that's the process na tumagina nananako uwanay vendors sometimes also get frustrated of waiting for payment. Sa online PO, it takes a couple of weeks to have that PO out, and then when you they give him the notice to go and do the service, and when after the service they report and they have to submit back to finance actual invoice for payment, and it takes the grace period is 30 days to have that payment out. So Ejige muna problema mami pago system that our biller and the billing system for the federal side because the delay of payments is not matching the time frame that they bill us. By the time po huzong example this month, ito mahalo mi 8 months, but this bill we have to wait for 30 days for the that previous months to come out. So those are the kind of glitch now we're facing right now at the same time.
Okay. The reason why I asked this, Dep, is because there are, it was brought to my attention and I reached out to you personally about a telephone number that's emergency lines.
Yes.
It was an extended period of time where there's no access to phone line.
Right.
And that's why I wanted to ask, where can we help? As far as, and I know you guys administer the program, you guys execute the operations on a day-to-day basis. It's troubling coming from this side. Ang patungo ng telephone emergency lines at on kana for an extended period of time.
Right.
So if I see them ko sinya figure out after manu no zangin motus ti pa tavoy to avoid any disruption of whether it's power or telephone line. Because when it taungog ikonominida when man mga ganam
Yeah, the
you know,
dinanchino no senators going back to Senator no Vice Chair Corina ne, na it's a priority needs na any communication, especially about this 911 system. Na
right.
they calling for emergencies at this place, and I noticed that you brought that attention to my knowledge.
Right.
Right. Ano, I bring that, and we serve also Tinian and Roda izunya sa pareho sitwasyon niya dos Tinian dan Luta. And dulu bula cut off gini gi previous no month na we sorted the payment, and then all of the sudden they cut us with all is a budget constraint. So we realized giza hita loke gizi revolving. However, guane dilele ji earlier na mami mention how soon na ji para ta transfer ye funds watu para lutan tinian, and it all depends what Chief Black was mentioning is it's all upon availability loke Medicaid zai Medicaid zangin matu no magi saipan is in nuevo na system na they trying to do the billers to separate once no afa serve tinian afa serve luta identify as low as of now at this point in time it's general umalumagin, and then we kind of identify monogy na service umano paluta monozu para, so sometimes it takes a while, then yeah, so that's all.
I'm hoping the link, real time link, whatever it is,
Yeah.
you guys plug in
So
whether Roda and Tinan can, you guys can read out.
yeah,
You
so it's just asan loki si Senator Selina na is Rhoda included into giving no assistance? Yes, sa we know na it is unya loki service na from the revolving, they got their own revolving law.
Mm.
Sometimes their payment is di mafatu halim is unya no account, it takes month and month, so sometimes we just subsidize what we got here to replenish loki unya medical needs, so we always assist Rhoda and Tinian at the same time. Whatever request we do, we insert it Rhoda and Tinian to be included into that.
Thank you, Deb. So we're hoping, we can, really evaluate the projection, no?
Yes.
With what was submitted to the legislature, and we cannot really promise anything right now because, you guys are one agency, but there's other agencies that are probably going to be asking the same thing. But we're going to continue, and I think a lot of it is you through managing using your whatever revolving fund, which you guys are very much on top of it. I can see it and I can hear it. Lowy, as far as the general fund, we want to make sure first that we take care of the personnel, then on to the other requests. I'm not going to ask anything further other than just continue to ask for your cooperation along the way, and maybe we can figure out how to get you guys back. You guys are in 80. What is it? FLSA, it's 106, or are you guys 106? So everybody's 106 now?
No. Oh yeah, no. 104 from the
So
last
104? We want to
yeah,
go to 106, right?
of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's where ultimately that's where we want to be at. That's why we're always trying to
Yeah.
be all the conservative what was submitted here to us, but we have to do our eval to get through it. Hopefully we can find additional funds along the way before we pass the budget.
So again, Senator Masnu, the mommy concern is our first responders, frontline people na manina affected na stizunya hours na, because they work 24/7. So we want to request that assistant ko magay kung sinya man mabira siya tatigi na ora.
Okay.
But what Miss Vic was mentioning earlier about that, hopefully that subsistence can give us that grant from that part to augment the shortfall, and we really appreciate that.
One in Tapi grant?
Yes,
The Office
we
of Grant
definitely.
Management?
Yes, definitely. We are all working majority the Zumami position of planning of those funds. We are gearing towards any kind of grants that we can get, and right now we are pushing. Now there's another opportunity that we just found out from that low emission grant opportunity, and we're trying to avail to another additional fire truck, but it's strictly an electric type. But it's a free money, so we want to tap into that.
Electric?
Yeah. So
What is-
in regards to that, the low emission
Hello, ano? E-Alpha?
EV
EV ko?
EV vehicle, electric vehicle. Yeah. So well, it's not really popular to need masasanay sa is not been titatungo na lo
Namago, Fimobo?
no sinya buntis timago feno siya lo. That's
Anyway.
part of that air pollution grant that's coming out, and we try to avail also any kind of grants because we know that we don't have the funding, the tunga na any other resources is on I'm pushing also. Yeah,
Especially, we lost some opportunities with the closure of Hyatt, no?
of course. Tunga looking.
So, yeah, it's just, a continuum.
It's so sad to hear, ne?
Anyway, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield my time. Thank you again, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ju. To recognize Senator Mendiola.
Thank you, Chairman. I think my colleagues have asked a lot of detailed questions, so I'm just going to ask about some, or I'm going to just try and ask a few questions to clarify some stuff. Are you guys aware of that Public Law 2352? Have you guys seen, or is it 2352 or 2382? It's the regulatory of non-emergency basic life support transport. Have you guys seen that?
Is that Senator Corina's
Yes.
bill?
Yes.
Yeah, and we do highly. I think we had a meeting with her, and we are in support with that bill.
So you guys do support that?
We in support with that bill.
And the reason why I mentioned that is we're talking about revenue, and I think that's
Exactly.
that's an avenue for some revenue. But I do wanted to ask some clarifying questions in terms of transport. Now, there are some constituents out there that were making issue of a priority care transportation that went down. I'm sure you guys are aware of that. The question that I have is that in that legislation, is there any guidance that you guys have in terms of regulating the transportation itself? Because if I understand it correctly, it's mainly the basic life support equipment and the certification of the employees, not the mechanical part of it. So, the good question is, do you guys have any recommendation in terms of the transportation itself, the vehicle itself? Do you guys regulate that?
Yeah, actually, we don't regulate the inspection of transport. If I'm not, I believe you have to apply for under Medicaid in order for you to be certified that you can transport.
So who does who's the regulatory guidance in terms of the transportation itself being in compliance?
Medicare. Yeah.
Medicaid. So Medicare has staff here to oversee the transportation itself in terms of being functional, being conducive for non-emergency transportation. Are you aware?
I think, Senator, so because even us, what we'll do is that, so we submit our application, good, to,
Senate?
So the transportation for this non-emergency transportation, the vehicle itself, I'm a little bit concerned of regulating it in terms of making sure that it's conducive to transport patients, right, in a non-emergency environment. So I guess what I'm trying to allude to is it something that we should include in that provision to make sure that we regulate the vehicle itself, the mechanical portion of the vehicle? And there's a follow-on question to this.
I guess, can I, point of information, Chairman? I know Senator Corina introduced Senate Bill 2352, and the intent of that bill is to regulate non-emergency services. So, is that something that I don't know if they have commented already? I don't know what committee that falls under, but I guess that's the concern that we have because we're carrying, our patients and all that, and they're not being regulated. So I just want to point that out. Have you guys commented on 2352?
Yes, we did.
I think, Senator, they do support it. What I'm trying to get at is just just to add a little bit more into that, because I know, if I understand this correctly, is that there's no subject matter experts in terms of regulating the vehicle itself. And the concern from the constituents out there is the vehicle. I know that you guys do support the legislation, which regulates the basic life support equipment, the certification of the employees. Now, the problem that I see is the transportation itself. Does it meet the standard? Is there a standard? And I wanted to ask if that's something that we should add. But again, that requires funding to kind of create a subject matter expert that's going to inspect the vehicle itself and make sure that it's in running condition. There's AC. It's all these other other than emergency basic life support equipment. That's what I wanted to ask. If it's something that you guys want to include in that.
Well, Senator, I think it's prudent sa gwinigi pagyo na we don't certify our ambulance. We went to a certified, a mechanic no shop who are certified to do, mechanical side.
Yeah.
So in terms nezi guagen ozong nilingyan na, do we certify the mechanical side? No. But it might be, for me, it will be okay to insert that language into that no bill, but not to the extent to DFM certifying it, because we're not mechanics.
Okay.
We go to
and
the
that was my
mechanic side.
follow-on question. Really, it's just to kind of clarify the air. No, so there was a concern about this to push it, but then when that vehicle is being towed, I'm sure it's not a life support equipment that went down. It's that mechanical portion of the vehicle, and DFEMS will not be able to support that or regulate that, because again, it's not the subject matter expertise of DFEM. So that's why I just wanted to ask that and just make some clarifying assumption by some of our constituents. So again, is based on his Mizu comments, you guys are not in support of the mechanical portion. That's
No, it's not that, but we in support to put that language na it has to be properly operational, mechanically, but included to be certified by a certified mechanic, not DFEMS.
okay.
No?
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to move on to some budget issues. Right, we're talking about hours of DFEMS is down to 104, correct? And you guys' staffing is at 114.
Yes, that's correct.
In your staffing down to 104, is it conducive for DFEMS? Are we violating any FLSA based on work risk cycle? And the reason why I'm asking again, because we dropped and I got that OMB is working on this grant to try and subsidize that and hopefully get it back to 106. But I'm kind of concerned that we got personnel that are being overworked because we reduce hours, and then I'm looking at the numbers of personnel, and you're down. I'm seeing 133 is you guys' desire, but you guys are down to 114. So I'm just curious, are we violating any FLSA standards in terms of hours?
I believe so, because its standard is 106.
So through that, I think it's prudent for this body to consider that in terms of hours and try and put it back. And then hopefully through this grant source that we will be seeking, we can augment that. Is that correct? Another issue, I remember in the EAGI, and this is to my colleagues' point in terms of being top heavy. I wanted to ask if, do you consider DFEMS's leadership now top heavy? Because I believe during that hearing, it was established that it was not. But now I'm getting information that now we have some new appointees. So my question is, are we top heavy now? And Izoku question is the other assistant chiefs not competent enough to run the divisions that we need to appoint new assistant chiefs?
I'm competent with my assistant chief right now, but still cinco ni more running divisions.
Sounds good. So now you're looking at 5 division chiefs, actual division chiefs. You appointed additional, and there's 5 divisions in DFEMS, correct? There's 5 divisions, not 7. There's 5 division, actual divisions per 1873. So for me, that now is top heavy. And I want to just point that out, that, you know, in the interest of being transparent and making sure that everybody is in line with the regulation, the law that created that sounds like now it's top heavy. So now is concern, you know, is budgeting for personnel. Is that something that we need to be concerned about in this budget, that we need to put, we add these acting chiefs their salary? Is that something that we need to make sure that we identify in the budget so that they can get their salary that they deserve?
Yes, Senator.
So now that's an additional. Is it in this budget? Because I don't see it.
No, it's not in the budget.
So something that you guys need to consider when putting that budget in, because I don't think we should be appointing acting for a long period of time, because if I'm not mistaken, through OPA's or OPM's regulation, there's a certain amount of time that they can be acting before we can actually give them that required the pay that they deserve, the pension. So it's something that you guys need to consider, appointing all these acting. And again, I'm not against them. I'm sure that all of these acting positions they're competent individuals. But my concern is that we're just appointing actings on top of the actual, but we're not thinking about how do we compensate these individuals that deserve those salary if they're going to be in a position of leadership, running operations or whatever, right? It's important for us to make sure that they get the salary they deserve, because they're in a position of large responsibility. So that's my concern, something that, you know, the leadership needs to consider in this budget. To the revolving account, and I just wanted to clarify some issue, and I heard you guys talk about the revolving account. Who has the expenditure authority for the revolving account?
That's me, sir.
The commissioner, correct? But through, of course, through this provision where in the last fiscal budget we gave the governor the 100% reprogramming authority, he has that discretion to move those budget based on presidents. What's important. So what I'm getting is the difference is really communication. Is that correct? Because I got that I have the authority to move funds based on presidents, but the problem is that when we're going to move that funds, we need to communicate. Is that correct? Because defense has plans from all you guys, from everything that you guys have just stated is a Mizo annual plan. You guys have plans for fire truck, and you guys have means of acquiring those funding. However, a lot of it too lies heavily on your revolving fund. But what I'm hearing from you guys is that you check the system, you have this, you base yourself on what your collection. It's not matching with the number. Today is 400,000. Tomorrow or next week it's 0, for example, and it hampers your operational needs. So Izuku issue, I think, is that we need to communicate, and you guys are communicating. But the issue is we need to make sure that these issues are addressed early on, so that whatever funding you guys are trying to expend is based on your operation is there and it's clear and concise. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes.
So lastly, I think that to the Secretary of Finance's defense too, because we had them 2 days ago, I believe, in here, and she stated that some of the issues is just really the reconciliation. I think when they go in the system and they reconcile, sometimes it's showing 400,000, right? But not all the invoices or not everything that defense had expended or committed is in the system. So today can be 400,000. When they reconcile a week from now, that number just changes. So I just want to make sure that I point that out, that it's not totally just we're not going to just put it all on the Secretary of Finance, because I believe that they're working really hard to try and reconcile everything. But the problem is that they alluded to a lot of shortage of manpower and trying to make sure that, you know, they reconcile a lot of these expended or procured items. So I just wanted to make sure that we clarify that. That's it for me. Mr. Chair, I you for now.
Thank you, Senator Mendiola.
If I may, Chair, and going back, gizin lang niya si Senator Mendiola in regards to any reconciliation finance na. I thought we're advancing with technology gini na iti ang ginon nahalom paped mo $3 agupa minus agi ang $10 sa lapi mo automatically stone liya nagupa no sublaw $8 na. So I don't see why the reconciliation probably on the other side lo is from 400,000 pos después on lock is ako no account and then later on we found out that you can't even use it pos later on tungo na you only got $5. That really no wanted to comprehend it to my mama no is if that's the reason why and I kula no hungok tati na ilang yan na we're giving the governor 100% spending. I was that na reprogramming authority that really a scary no word night law. Well, definitely. Taza babigago amzo in the budgeting act na zangenuzo there's a provision there in in lure for a revolving na make sure fund na there's a language in there na on the fire side na takilo di wagi medico no needs the por favor sa puresti para linala tauto no para no ay ko mas concern we can reprogram and I know there's priority also gini dota cinema no issues law go paramount no gini dota no para dota gi response para man malanguta no huzong comunidad so eno is ko no concern mas no.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Deputy Commissioner. I think what we've heard in the hearing with Department of Finance, while the governor has 100% reprogramming, he hasn't exercised that, or maybe it's not allowed to go into the revolving accounts. And so the issue of the discrepancies between the balances, I think this is where agencies need to be proactive in the sense where once you get a fund certification as of a certain date, then you keep track from there on. And then that could be used as justification to finance to say, wait a minute, as of July 31st, I had this amount. And so something happened in between. But before we proceed, before I go any further, if I can recognize the essay for OMB, and then if you can also share what your report is given in terms of that revolving account.
I just want to make a comment on what was mentioned on the floor with respect to Munis. So it all depends on like the parameters that are entered into the system when you're writing a report. So if you did not specify exactly what you really want to see out of the report, then of course that report's going to come out different. If you want to just ask for like cumulative to the current year to date from October 1 to July 31, then you can get that information. If you want to go back retroactive to the inception of Munis, you can also do that. So, but there is, parameters that you have to set yourself, the report writer, so that you can get the information that you're seeking for. And on the other issue, with respect to the reprogramming authority, and thank you, Chairman, for clarifying that the governor's reprogramming authority is on the executive branch and not outside. With respect to the special revolving accounts, the expenditure authority is the commissioner of fire, and all entries and all expenses, all obligations, anything that relates to changes to that special revolving fund is coming from the Department of Fire in itself. They request to the Department of Finance for any changes, any payments that needs to be made. So the changes to that revolving account is the work of the department in itself, and not, anybody just transferring out funds. No, there was a transfer of funds recently, but that was a request that was made by the Department of Fire Commissioner.
Thank you. Do you have the current balance of the revolving account?
Yes. Currently, I know that again, the disparity with reporting that was mentioned earlier, my staff had shown me a report that she ran before she came over, and her fund status was reflecting as their remaining balance at 4,000 plus. The balance that I ran, when I came up here, there was a balance of 8,245. And we've looked through each of the items where the difference came through. It was in travel. There was a travel that was processed. So Munis is real time. information. I could close this down and run it again, and it may be different.
Thank you. And I understand your point in that the parameters sometimes you would have to make changes because even I myself, when I run the report for my accounts, without changing the parameters, it'll show a huge amount until you make that change. But can you, since I still have you on here, can you again provide the figure as to what might be expected from OIA to cover personnel expenses for next fiscal year?
3 million.
3 million. Is that just for DFEMS alone, or are we including other agencies?
So in 2024, this is a combine of 2023 award and 2024 award. It was split. It was a total of 3 million. The CNMI received 2.2 million in the initial award, and then the subsequent award came later, which was 554,000.
But what agencies did these cover?
The agencies are the Department of Corrections, Department of Fire, Department of Public Safety, Commerce for ABTC, and the Attorney General's office.
Now, since a lot of these were covered in the general fund for the current fiscal year, did these pay for some of them and then reprogrammed the local funds portion, or
So
How does that
how this grant is handled, it's everything is expense under the local account, and then we just process an expense transfer into the grant.
okay? So what happens to those local monies that became available once these federal monies?
It remains
Address
in
it.
the account unless there's a request for a reprogramming.
Okay, how do you know what those figures are if we were to return all law enforcement back to the 100% with the understanding that these same source of funding will be used to cover those?
I have the information for the Department of Fire, which we just calculated earlier. It's $580,067.
And so is there any way that on the local fund side we can further reduce the allocation to personnel to free up some of that money to address other needs, with the understanding that 3 million will be coming in to cover these positions?
That would be taking a risk because there are unforeseen circumstances that the department may need to absorb, and I wouldn't recommend it.
True, but now that in the current year, that essentially frees up money in their general fund allocation that they could use to reprogram, whereas other agencies don't have that flexibility. And so if we're going to consider this 3 million as another source of income that could be used to supplement the shortfall in DFEMS, then we can use some of that money to allocate towards other areas. And so I just wanted to see if that's something that can be considered.
I think we need to take that separately, that issue. I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay. But in the interim, in preparation for our meeting with just you and Department of Finance, if you can provide a separate personnel allocations based on the consideration of the OIA grant that may be used to support that. Because prior to and at the recommendation of some members, we are going to hold off on any adoption of the concurrent resolution until we have true figures, with also the understanding that we may need to revisit the HOT to further increase the general fund allocation that we can use to provide to other agencies. And so, as I stated earlier, within the next week and a half, when we do have that meeting, if these are some of the information that can be prepared by then. At the same time, can we also get a report from DFIM? And so I know it's been mentioned that right now there's the suspension of limitations on the revolving fund accounts. And part of the discussion is to maintain that provision within the next fiscal year's budget. The issue that we're seeing here is that we don't have access to your expenditure report on those accounts unless it's provided by you guys or upon request by the committee. Whereas when we get the budget submission, we are able to see how your previous year expenditures have been allocated. And so that's something that we track and we can see how best you use your money. But whereas now, where all agencies basically have free reign to use those monies as they please, or as they see fit for the department, we don't have access to how those monies are spent. And in order to ensure responsible spending with the limited resources you already have available in your revolving accounts, I hope that we can get a copy of how you've spent your funds within the current fiscal year. 1.4 from what I heard earlier, the year-to-date expenses from those revolving account, it seems alarming in the sense where you only have 4,000 to 8,000 available. So how were those monies spent, and what this may maybe paint a picture for how your next fiscal year's revolving fund accounts will be spent. And so, Commissioner, if you can provide that within the next week or so, if that's enough time to provide the committee a breakdown of your actual expenditures on that revolving fund accounts.
Yes, I will.
Thank you. For the first round, any other members? For the second round, any other clarifying members before we dismiss? Recognize the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I just have some clarifying questions. So going back to the billing, what is the standard payment terms for your vendors?
30 days.
Net 30? On all your vendors? Okay. And I heard earlier that you guys just procured a new contract with the billing person, right? From, is it Ohio? What are the terms and conditions for that particular contract as far as payment terms?
So the new billers for priority medical billing out of Virginia, they charge 7%, and we pay them once the claim is approved and they collect it. That's how we pay them. They submit an invoice.
So they submit an invoice to you guys,
Yes.
and then you guys find a way to pay the vendor
So
without even.
whatever collection it's been collected or approved, he'll charge us by that.
Okay.
If the claim is denied, he won't charge us.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how the contract goes. Upon submission of claim, that's when they submit an invoice.
So the invoice is submitted. You have 30 days to pay the vendor.
Yes.
Okay. And are you guys current with your payments?
Right now, because the contract was done on March, we submitted a couple of invoice. So for last month's invoice, we're waiting for the end of this month for the check to come up. Yeah, sometimes it's delayed.
Okay, so the answer is no. You
No,
guys are not
yes.
current.
Yep.
And what are the on the contract itself? What are the terms on late payments, late fees, penalty fees?
It doesn't say in the contract if there's a late payment on it. Not like our
Really?
previous
So
biller.
so your contract doesn't address any late payments?
No, only when in submission of claim. Our biller understands.
So the biller doesn't charge you guys an interest or penalty fee for being late on your payment? Because
I know,
that's very
I know, because when I communicated with our biller, he does understand that of the procurement process. Once you submit a bill, an invoice, we submit it to, we give it to logistic to submit it into Munis. Then it will take 30 days for the check to come out, and our biller do understand. He's being
Right, but what I'm asking, what are the terms and conditions on the actual contract and not what
I
he,
need to look at it.
because we want to be mindful of that, right? Because those are unexpected expenses that defense would have to incur. We already know that you guys are not current on your payments, so typically any billing vendor would have some kind of a penalty fee or interest fee, you know, on yeah, late charges, right, on billings or invoices that are not paid on time according to what the terms are. So that's also something to take into consideration, Commissioner, because that's something that you're not factoring into your budget, right? And knowing the turnaround time to process these payments taking several months, right? That's something that you would have to consider, and just thankfully that this new vendor is very cooperative and understanding, because not many companies would do that. They will literally charge you for any late charge fees, right? So so that's that. um, I think in the July 1st budget submission from the governor, uh, and this is to OMB, I think about $934 million was identified as federal funds, right? Um, is defense expecting to receive any additional funding as a pass-through entity or subrecipient from these grants?
It all depends if there were any grant applications that were submitted. Those are, grants that are there are current,
Already.
but they would have to submit, an application for a continuation of that grant. I mean, almost all grants are like that. You would have to submit a request or apply for them.
Okay. And to the commissioner, I hear something about an appointee, like additional chief, earlier to Senator Mendola's statement. So, can you help us understand why you had to appoint additional chief on top of what you already have with your 5 divisions?
Okay, so it's not in the division. So like right now, training and the special operations group. So I want to rank. I want an assistant chief to head that section. You know,
Is
so
that a temporary appointment, or
no, it's a permanent position.
so the title has changed from whatever that person's current title is to an assistant chief?
Yes, ma'am.
And and was that just done internally, or did that go through OPM and like
It's going through the process. Yeah.
okay.
Uh-huh.
So it's not acting. Is it acting or is it
Right now they're still acting because they're pending on their
and
relocation.
how long has the okay, first of all, how many additional chiefs have you appointed as acting?
I have 4.
4. So you appointed new okay. And how long have they been in acting capacity?
About 4 months now.
Okay, so I believe the regulation is anyone who's in acting capacity after 90 days is entitled to the salaries or the compensation for that particular title. But those, I don't believe those were budgeted for in this fiscal year. So how would the department make the difference between what the current salary is and what the acting pay should be?
Our plan is to get certain percent from our revolving account to
Yeah.
augment their salary.
To augment, knowing that your revolving fund account is unreliable and very tight in budget, basically, right? Uh, what is the percent increase in their current salary versus the acting?
Yeah, about 2 steps in their current salary.
Okay, which is what? How much is that?
About
So an
$1,000.
additional
About $1,000, Tivik?
It all depends what the current salary is, but it's 2 steps. We would have to refer to, Public Law 1983 to determine that.
Okay. And so with those new appointees, are those reflected in the budget submission as the new titles and what the new salary would be?
No.
So then your budget, so that the budget request is understated? Because the budget request is their current position and salary, right? But if you bump them up to 2 steps up with new title, and that's not reflected on the budget submission, then the budget request is understated. Okay, but okay, so you're using the revolving fund to augment the difference. But going forward in FY25, I mean, are you gonna or even beyond that, you're gonna continue to use your revolving fund to augment the difference between what is showing on the budget request and the actual title and salary?
No, we're gonna request for increase in our budget,
Okay.
not about the revolving account.
Okay.
Just add on to.
Sure.
So if it was 2,500, an example, if it was 2,500 increase, the impact on DFAMS on the budget would only be $96 per pay period. You
Right.
take 2,500 divided by
Sure, but times
26
times 4 people,
times 4,
right? I mean,
$385.
right. And I know when you break it down that way, it seems very immaterial, right? But I mean, just looking at the numbers of how much they are collecting for their revolving fund account on top of everything else that they're paying, right? To include utilities. I just want to make sure that, when decisions are like that are being made, that there's also the responsibility of making sure that the funds are there to support those decisions. So that's all. I'm just making sure that we try and capture as much as we can as to what the true costs are, and making sure that there's sufficient funding to pay for those activities. That's all. And yeah, that's all I have for my clarifying question. Thank you, Chair. Are you?
Thank you. Recognize Senator Mendiola or Senator Revolta.
Just one question, with respect to your utility expenses. Does defense plan to migrate to alternative energy such as solar to help with your utilities? We haven't heard that.
Yes, so our plan is to put a solar to all of the fire stations, including our offices.
And have you worked with energy
OGM,
division?
yes,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
That's all. Thank you.
Senator Mendiola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to continue on Senator Balta or Senator Magofni's point, it's a little bit frustrating because I have met with you, Commissioner, on this issue early on. I don't think it's 4 months since this acting ship. I think it's longer than that, because when that issue came out, it was addressed to me directly, and I actually went and sat with you and we spoke about it. So according to your statement, then it's a temporary solution. Is that correct?
For the acting
for the acting
chief? No.
But when we spoke, you said it was a temporary position. You
Well-
didn't have plans to change the pay. It was more of just a temporary assignment. And that was your statement to me then. Is that correct?
Well, I decided that to place these people on this section, so so we can have the command and control.
Okay, fair. But now I want to go back to, so there's 5 division chiefs, right? Assistant chief running the divisions. And then now you have 4 additional acting that soon will be assistant chief.
Correction, that will be 3.
3 assistant chiefs? Additional 3. Okay, so additional 3. Now my question is, what division will they fall under, and who will they be reporting to?
They will be reporting to me.
to you. So that means you've created additional divisions, correct? Because the way the structure of 1873 is designed is that there's 5 divisions ran by deputy commissioner. The intent was to create a more permanent solution rather than appointing 5 deputy commissioners, appoint assistant chiefs where there's more continuity. Now, if you appoint 3 more acting, that would mean that first and foremost, you are top heavy because you're short in operational manpower, but you have more divisions now under your command.
Yes. So we came up with an amendment for our 18.73. So from 5 division, we're gonna bump it up to 8 division. So they will be included in this division for the amendment that we're trying to push.
And is that reflective? Again, I'll just go back to that. Is that reflective of the current budget?
No.
So that's where my problem lies, is that you created this, you anticipate to change 1873 without any clarification or legislation that materialized. You just created these positions and created more divisions without the proper legal means. Is that correct?
No.
Anyways, it's just very frustrating because we're adding more bosses, and it from the statement earlier, it just really colluding with what you're saying, where you need more manpower, you plan on putting more personnel in, you plan on, and for me, the priority should have been that, so that you can have more people in actual operational capacity, so that you can respond at a capacity where you're not exhausting manpower and you're not just making more bosses to just kind of run into each other. That's just my issue here, and I just wanted to point that out. Mr. Chair, thank you for that.
Thank you, Senator Mendiola. I think in closing, just to go over some of these positions, and maybe just help me understand. It looks like almost every division except for emergency services already has a assistant fire chief. Is that correct? And you are still you're still requesting for additional assistant fire chiefs within these divisions? Is that my understanding?
This is for the other division.
No, but all the other divisions already have an assistant fire chief. Are you requesting for additional assistant fire chiefs for for these divisions?
For the other sections, like for the training section, the special operations group section, it's not in the division.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chair. I think what he's referring to is that under those divisions there are sections.
So you're okay.
So he's planning on making that divisions, and that's why he appointed acting ship.
Okay. Okay. So just going back to your overall FTE requests, there are 18 vacant positions that are the administration has proposed to remain open by including $1 in those positions. Does your administration division really need a clerk too? Or are you able to manage without?
Yes, for EMS office.
I see there under emergency services, there are 9 vacancies to have, and it consists of several firefighter positions at different levels. Do you need so I'm seeing 2 clerk 2s, 1 for administration, 1 for emergency medical services. Do you need both?
Just 1 for EMS of division.
So we can take out 1 from administration, correct?
Yes.
Dispatch has 5 vacancies. 4 of those are trainees. Is that needed right now?
right now they're all they transition from trainee to EMDs, but unfortunately, personally, I think we have only like just two. So I'm requesting for additional 3 EMDs to augment those EMDs that resign.
So you want us to replace the EMTs with EMDs, correct?
And no,
Or
we're,
trainees with
we're
the,
referring to the emergency medical dispatcher trainee to emergency medical dispatcher.
so to convert, right? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
Okay. So of the 18, if we remove one clerk 2, convert the 4 trainees to EMDs.
Right now, Senator, like we only have 2 EMDs.
Right.
So I'm
but there's
requesting.
4 trainees that are vacant right now. So,
So I'm
you want to
requesting-
convert those 4 trainees to dispatcher? Is that
No,
what-
so we're gonna start from emergency medical dispatcher trainee, and then once they're done with all the requirements, then we're gonna change their position to emergency medical dispatcher. To hire the 4.
Okay, so keep the 4. And then there's one dispatcher that's currently vacant, so that will make 5 at the end of their training, right? Do you need the 5? Can you go down from that 5?
Yes,
By how many?
by 1.
So you can lose 1, but you need 4 additional, correct? And then in order to get rid of these overtime, what's the true number of how many firefighters you will need for next fiscal year?
See, like right now, Senator, like for the fire engine from the NFPS new standard under the 1710, the fire engine should be manned by 3 personnel. Right now, we're only manning for 2.
Yeah.
And the
No, I
ambulance,
understand. Just what's the total firefighter positions you will need?
roughly about 160.
So how many more we're talking about?
About 20.
Wait, you have 114 now, right? Is that what I heard earlier?
Yeah, 114.
So at least 20 more.
And I need, Senator, I need to include Tinan and Rhoda. So I'm looking at maybe.
No, no need to include road and Tinian because those will be separate requests.
Yes, so correct, about 20%.
So this would be, so right now there's a current request for 2 firefighter 1s, 4 firefighter 2s, 1 firefighter 3.
Yes. Yeah,
So we
those are the
take that.
vacancies.
So if we take that, you need the remainder from that 20, or will that be on top of the 20? Okay. And then and then you need 2 more. Well, you need 1 firefighter, fire crew supervisor, and a firefighter 3 for the prevention and arson. Correct. Okay. Thank you. We'll consider that request with the understanding again that there might be some funds from OIA, but just in terms of numbers, we'll see how we can include that as a provision, but also maybe taking out some of the positions that you claim or you can do without. And that is all I have for now. There were several statements made today that you will provide reports based on the individual request by each member, and so I hope we can get that within the next week or so, inclusive of the revolving fund account expenditure report. And so, if there's anything else that we would like to bring up, or I guess that wasn't mentioned here today, we'll reach out to your office, Commissioner, and likewise, if there's something else that you would like to provide the committee that wasn't mentioned here today, please feel free to include that with your submission of additional documents.
Yes, sir, Senator, and thank you for giving us the time to share our budget.
Okay.
for
Thank
today.
you. Thank you to your team. Thank you all for being here today. At this time, since we still have DPS right after, we will take a recess until 1:30.